to whomever it might concern, it's time to talk about why Russia is bad for you. For yourselves, your families, your friends, your countries, your pets, and your sense of reality. Quite similar to how rotten food is bad for your stomach. Quite similar to how rust corrodes metal. Quite similar to how infections spread. Quite similar to how your dirty laundry becomes a breeding ground for bacteria. Here I shall paint, in rather broad strokes, how that might be relevant for the you at the receiving end of this speech. Dear sir, dear madam, dear person. So, where to start? Let's start with when most of you have noticed it. The existence of a conflict. What kind of conflict, though? What is happening there in reality, just as I speak? A full-scale invasion would be a good, simple answer. A bit too simple, though, and that seeming simplicity serves as a cover-up of what's actually at play here. Okay, let's first define the method of influence. That is an encroachment on a sovereign nation's soil. Why, though? Is Russia lacking in this regard? Indeed, that is not so. Instead, it, Russia, cannot be otherwise. It has subsisted on that taken from others for centuries, and has thus far failed to satiate the drive for endless expansion. Endless strife to feed its sickly hubris. The best way to steal is to call something yours. Moreover, to deny the owner's existence, and if not possible, force it into obscurity. Genocide, slaughter, forced conversions into second-class citizens, indoctrination of the young ones. Russia doesn't only want the land, it has plenty, it wants the soul of those living on it. To appropriate that which it has stolen, to take for its own those who would have brought glory to their own lands, to clothe itself in the mantle of the skinned peoples, and ensnare those naive or cynical enough to not care. And it would have done it again as it had used to. The so-called West has got used to talking the talks and debating at the debates, what with the due process and a paper trail of incremental changes. Some appear to think that squabbles over political correctness and disaffectionate intelligentsia aiming their pompous resentment toward a tribe of deluded college kids who are yet to face reality is a culture war. This here is the culture war, fought with words and arms galore. Blood is the ink of this war, flesh is its parchment. An existential threat to all that you love, your consumerism, your democracy, your institutions and hallowed principles of law and order. There was one such culture war fought recently, in case you have already forgotten about it. The war with the Islamic State. A war on a much lesser scale, but one which could serve as a reference, in that it was aimed at the West, directly and unambiguously. This one is worse, inasmuch as it took so long to recognize the grand threat, and still it's unclear to me if you really see it for what it is, dear listener. Russia has made a spectacle of the international law. It has deconstructed it along with the system which is to define and enforce it. It has reneged on every possible principle it has sworn to uphold. Yes, the word is deconstructed. When one elevates something to a position of a value, one makes it part of an objective, though not absolute, standard. and one views their narrative with that standard in mind. Russia has set out to topple that objectivity, taking a leap of faith of post-modern nihilism ad absurdum. When a symbol is deposed from its high place of meaning, it's hard to make it shine again. A law flouted is a law scorned. Could it be this is a divine sign that the time of change is at hand? Perhaps miraculous things are possible, brought about by the workings of the self-styled, mysterious, incomprehensible depth of the Russian soul. What lurketh therein, a curious explorer might inquire. Rest assured, we shall not have to delve too deep. A peon, a serf is there, whipped, branded, but eternally loyal to the master. A small person who has given up the reins of his or her life to somebody else. They above us know better. Maybe there's much to learn in the grandiloquence of its frontmen and women. A moshmash of vaguely Christian victim complex and messianic fantasies, a self-assigned sacred role in rectifying humanity's follies. The two behemoths, the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union, have merged together into an unwieldy chimera of counterfeit, but apparently inspiring, to some, history. The resultant entity is a clear simulacrum, a distorted end product, without a clearly defined basis in reality. Postmodern denial of any internally consistent overarching narratives in its most grisly, absurd form. The tragedy of that nation is so much more acutely felt, in that the few who stood up valiantly against the tyranny are not actively supported by the supposedly enlightened immigration. How can that be? Well, we've just answered that question. Let's tread along the facade, beloved by many, and talk spirituality, dear friend. Is that ideology bad for you? It is bad. It's bad for Christians, unless one is an avid lover of the by now largely antiquated form of Christianity, which promulgates its tenets via state-sanctioned repressive apparatus. The verses they are cherry-picking are likely not the ones you cherish, but nobody will hear your cries. Don't be blinded by the golden sheen of their churches. It's neither the cradle nor the keeper of orthodoxy. It's bad for Confucians. The Russians want none of the responsible rule, whereby the hegemon is the role model for those he governs. Neither do they care for the doctrine of universal love of Mozi, nor rectifying men to be cultured and well-meaning as Sunzi suggested, nor the unifying and orderly rituals of the founder. It's bad for Taoists. The dominant discourse is rife with promulgation of shallow spirituality. It serves to force empty rituals on everyone with the name of bringing them to a bleak standard of thoughtless jingoism. Nobody cares to reach to the unifying principle of the universe, empty themselves, and emulate heaven in its pure, unmolested productivity. It's bad, so very bad, for shamanists and followers of native religions. Foreign usurpers are sending those peoples to die for a foreign cause, uprooting their ancestral traditions. Having discarded their true homeland, they perish with nobody to carry on the torch. It's bad for Buddhists. The very opposite of the teaching is put on the pedestal. Violence and folly are honored instead of non-violence, loving kindness and wisdom. One is sent to kill and die for the fleeting pleasure of vassals of Mara. One Sangha is being torn apart by the very filth one has admitted into one's heart. is bad for Slavic pagans. There is nothing specifically Slavic about the Russian regime except for an occasional rhetorical travesty. It neither supports nor protects those traditions. A forever drunk, disenfranchised rural populace is not a signature Slavic thing. It's bad for Muslims. Has Islam switched its meaning to prostration before tyrants? It's bad for Zoroastrians. They were among the first to theologically define the workings of evil. If any of them stand with Russia, all that smoke must have eaten out their eyes. It's bad for irreligious people. It's hard to imagine why a person such as that would be buying into a demented cult, promoting imaginary history and cultural pedigree. To feel warm inside while languishing in a poorly heated flat, perhaps. It's bad for brave people. Their bravery is wasted on a fight to keep the craven crowned. It's bad for cowards. They will have to live in fear till they are butchered, or bow in fear lest they are butchered. It's bad for everyone, without and within Russia, though some might have sadly lost the capacity to absorb the cure. Look to the west, look to the east. What is the tradition Russia is preserving? Dear listener, if you are a conservative leaning toward Russia's cause, then are you really? What values are you preserving? Degeneration and descent into barbarism don't seem to give off that impression. If you're a progressive, why are you ignoring an outbreak of predatory imperialism? Has internal strife left no time for you to look around? Are you afraid of escalation? If so, how much more might you grow thus later on? Many have sympathized with Israelis in their grief over those murdered or taken captive in October last year, and have no qualms about the wanton destruction of Gaza. Some have long sympathized with Palestinians, driven into shrinking ghettos, radicalized by constant ethnic tensions. Yet many of the former don't think it's proper for Ukraine to strike Russian infrastructure deep within Russian territory, for fear of escalation, for fear of disrupting production and logistics, for fear of damaging national interest in that the trade, direct or indirect, with the aggressor is uncomfortably diminished. Similarly, the latter cry out in solidarity about a river and a sea and a land between them which is free, a howling, perhaps unintentionally imparting terrorists with a good image, not concerned with solving the crisis which befell the displaced civilians. Yet suddenly, there is so much nuance when things come to Ukraine, talks of pacifying the assailant, talks of stopping the war to save lives, though no mechanism to prevent Russia from amassing even more forces after a breather gets offered. Your values seem to matter for real only when there is no risk to lose the freshly printed buck in your pocket. Short-term comfort seems to be the greatest value. To sum up, a brute is hitting the object of his hatred with a club, repeatedly, stubbornly, and he'll keep on hitting until the assailed one either drops dead from internal injury, making space for the brute, or yields and humbles himself before the brute and joins the brute's ranks, or the brute dies. There is too little space for onlookers. The brute does not respect neutrality. If recent events were not a wake-up call for you, perhaps waking up to the blast wave will become one. That is how cultural norms get rewritten. Thank you for humoring this ranter. Yours faithfully, me.